Hello and welcome to another Tech Campus Coffee Live webinar. This is an opportunity for you to learn about career paths at Tech directly from professionals in your field.
We'll be speaking to technical representatives from a variety of fields at Tech, and they'll share why they enjoy what they do.
Participants also have a chance to directly ask speakers and recruiters questions and get a good understanding of why Tech is a great place to work, as well as where your strengths, talents, and learning opportunities lie.
On the line here, so I want to make sure we introduce everybody and obviously hear from the experts on the call today about the geology departments here at Tech. So first I'll start with Andrea. Andrea, if you want to maybe introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you work and what you do.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrea Berg, Senior Geologist at Line Creek Operation. I've been with Tech since 2008. After graduating from the University of Alberta, started at Highland Valley Copper. So worked there for 2 years right out of school, was getting some copper experience at that porphyry deposit. And then after that moved to Vancouver, where I worked with the exploration team for 6 years, based out of Vancouver, working on gold exploration projects in the Yukon, Ontario, and Quebec. Although I never actually made it physically to Quebec, still worked on the projects. So all of that exploration work was obviously really exciting. Got to experience lots of different places and work with different project teams. And then 2016, made the move to the Elk Valley to start a position here in coal. So I've been at Line Creek since 2016, mostly in sort of the short range geology capacity. So really working with operations and short range engineering on coal recovery, coal quality, working with the plant and logistics, the day-to-day sort of planning that goes into the geology side of things. And then recently, in the last year, almost two now, I've been involved with Race 21 as the idea owner, just sort of leading the ore body knowledge initiatives here at Line Creek on the race side, which has been really exciting. And that's pretty much it for me.
That's awesome. That's a lot. You've done well for yourself. All right. And then I'll pass it over to Leigh. So Leigh is also a geologist here. And if Leigh, you want to do an intro as well and talk a little bit about how you landed here at Tech?
Yeah, no worries at all. My name is Leigh. I'm a project geologist with the Coal Geoscience Group, which is a central group that supports all the mines in the Elk Valley. I started in April of last year, right out of a PhD at Oklahoma State. So I've done a little bit of research and I've got a bit of work experience working on coal from my days as an undergrad at the University of Regina in Saskatchewan. So that's how I ended up in the Elk Valley.
Awesome. That's great. Perfect. And again, I'll encourage people, if you have questions, you can certainly put your questions in the chat. I know Masaki just put a note in there as well. Feel free to put them in there. Or if you want to turn your mic on, you're feeling brave and want to chat with us, by all means, just put your hand up and then I'll come around and get you to ask your question with your mic on. But that being said, I've got a pocket full of questions. I could keep these guys going for a while. And obviously thinking of, obviously my focus on the campus side and obviously likely the focus of most people on the call. I'm interested in what it's like to work here. What kind of things would you be doing? So maybe that's a good place for us to start. I guess as a student with Tech, Andrea, maybe I'll start with you because I know that you've had quite a few students working with you and in your departments over the years that you've been here. Can you talk to me a little bit about what someone would do in a geology department as a co-op student or a new graduate maybe?
Sure. Yeah, so co-op students at Line Creek, and I think similar to the other operations that are coming in as geology students, typically come into the coal quality geologist role. So they spend their time with the coal quality technicians and geologists on site, understanding our different coal seams, learning about the various qualities that impact our MET and PCI products. And so lots of field time in coal quality. Just takes a lot of time to sort of learn all the pieces that go into it. And then on top of that, they'll often participate in exploration programs, supporting drilling programs, either with logging or just day-to-day check-in on drills. But there'll also be plenty of opportunity to help out with side projects, either on the data management side or just just investigating projects that we may not necessarily have capacity to do. So definitely, opportunities to carry a lot of responsibility by the end of your 8-month term, which is great. And most of the co-ops seem to be really successful in doing that.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. No, I get evaluations from all the students once they finish their co-op term to sort of say, like, figure out, like, how was it? Was it what you expected? And literally the most common comment we get, especially with a lot of these field type roles, is, I can't believe how much responsibility I was given as a co-op. And so certainly it always rings true when I talk to people about the responsibility students get. Like, we really treat them like a full-time employee once they're up and running and, obviously used to the operations, and they certainly get a lot of really great experience from people like yourself on site to sort of guide them through what it's like to work here. Leah, I guess I'm curious to learn over from you. I know you said you had your PhD, which is definitely a different route than most people take moving into operations. So I guess I'm kind of curious, you came from a research background. What sort of drew you to tech, and how does that play into your role now?
Well, I mean, the research is as part of what I do. I also have a lot of experience working coal operations. So I actually used to work in Tumbler Ridge for a competitor.
Okay.
Tech has got a mine under care maintenance in the Tumbler Ridge area as well. So so I guess the combination of my research and my actual industry experience is what drew me to tech. And then luckily for me, a bunch of people I went to school at UBC Vancouver with, they've been employees at tech for years.
Nice.
And I happened to do 2 summers in the Valley with a different company too. So it all just came together. And it was a chance for me to come back home to Canada after having spent about 5 years in the US pursuing the PhD. So, yeah.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Yeah, because a lot of people often ask, like, they come to these sessions and they're like, well, if I'm pursuing a PhD, are there still opportunities for me at Tech? So it's really neat for us to see there's lots of different avenues you can take. And it might not just be like a core operational role. It might be in a different area. It might be supporting operations, which is where you are. And that's really neat to see the different areas where we can support people from various disciplines. We've got an interesting question in the chat. And so someone's asked about, Rob Trump, bragged about clean coal. How is tech working to make the uses of coal a clean energy? So I can speak to this, but maybe Andrea, do you want me to pass it over to you? Or I guess it's actually addressed to Leigh, actually. So if you, Leigh, do you want to speak to this to talk a little bit about the coal we mine and how it's used, that sort of thing?
No, of course. So, I mean, we mine basically coking coal, which is used to make steel. So it's a very different product from, I guess, clean coal that the person asking the question is referring to. Because when people talk about clean coal or not so clean coal, they are usually talking about steam coal used to generate power. Most of our power in BC is hydroelectric power. So when we go out into the world markets to market our coking coal product, it's kind of a green product in that sense because the electricity that runs most of our operations, in fact, I'll say 90-95% of our operations is all run on hydroelectricity. To make this coking coal product used to make steel is very clean. But it kind of gets lost in the general discussion when people talk about coal. They don't make that distinction between coal used in power plants and coal used to make steel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. That's an awesome explanation. Thanks for that. Great. All right. And then somebody's talked a little bit here about the slow shift away from coal impacted operations, job opportunities, and experience at Tech. How has the slow shift away from coal impacted operations, job opportunities, and experiences at Tech, any future adjustments the company has in place to work around it? So again, I think along the same lines, there's maybe, Andrea, do you want to speak to this? It's really talking a little bit more about the coal and maybe phasing coal out, where it's the coal that we have is certainly in high demand. Maybe do you want to speak to that a little bit?
I can try, but I think Leah covered it sort of already, right? Really focusing on our metallurgical coal products and shifting away from our thermal coal products. So I believe like Line Creek is the only site that does still carry ox coal as inventory, and we shifted towards production of PCI coal, which is pulverized coal injection, a fuel basically used in the coke making process, as opposed to thermal coal. Still, price dependent and dependent on the market, whether production of thermal coal continues or not. But at the moment, it's probably 5 to 10% of our overall production, and future plans are phasing that out. So
Awesome.
I'm sure if I covered what you were planning on there,
Yep.
Stacey.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and I was just going to say the same thing. It's sort of along the same lines of really just instead of when you hear about the media about coal, they really do lump it all together, and there's quite a difference between the two. And yeah, so it's great to speak to that. Andrea, I'm curious. I know that you mentioned Race 21 and the technology side of things, and that's sort of where you've transitioned over the past little bit. So can you talk to us a little bit about, I guess, what technologies are you guys implementing from a geology space, or what gets you excited? What's the next step for us from an operational level in terms of this innovation and transformation for technology?
I mean, I think at a high level, you already spoke to it, or Misaki did, just is really like being able to pull all of the data that we have and we produce at our operations together in a meaningful way to make better decisions. So on the geology side, so for ore body knowledge, that includes improving coal recovery. So decision-making tools on coal recovery, in particular for thin seams, this is one tool that we are implementing at site here. And then just also sort of a short-range coal recovery dashboard. So you might hear Power BI thrown out in this conversation at some point. But yeah, just being able to visualize that data in a meaningful way to make data-driven decisions instead of just doing things status quo, as we always have, I think is the biggest thing. And then there's going to be modeling and coal blending projects that are going to be pretty significant in terms of changing the way we model and improving our geological models, and then sharing that with engineering and environment teams in a meaningful way as well.
Great. That's awesome. Great. And then I guess in terms of something that you hear quite a bit from the engineering group and from the geologists in the field here, they talk a lot about how complicated our geology is, or how unique it is to mountaintop mines, say, for example. So I guess, Leigh, can you speak to a little bit about what makes us unique, or what makes it particularly challenging to mine here from a geology perspective?
Yeah, no, I can definitely do that. So just because of the way the geology in this area works, this area of North America, especially in BC and Alberta, we're very close to the Rockies. So you don't sort of have that layer cake geology where everything is flat and low lying. It's a little more complicated because just in that process of forming the Rocky Mountains, orogenic process, as you say in geology, you sort of chewed up and mixed everything together. So that has a fair amount of risk involved. So the fact we're actually able to be the second largest exporter globally of seaborne steelmaking coal is a feat in and of itself, because our biggest competitors are based out in Australia, where for the most part their coals are pretty flat laying. So it's a small miracle we're able to do what we do on the scale we do it, to be very honest. And that's something I guess we should always keep in mind, that mining is fairly technical, fairly high tech, especially in the areas we walk, which I find pretty fun, pretty interesting.
Yeah, the comment you always hear here is, you can mine here, you can mine anywhere. Awesome. Great. Okay, and that sort of jumps into the question that's in the chat right now. When someone had mentioned that when researching Teck, one thing that caught their attention was the attention to safety and all aspects of the operations. What are some health and safety programs that employees at Teck can participate in? Maybe Andrea, I'll toss that one over to you if you want to start, and then maybe Leigh, you can add in if you like.
Sure. I mean, I think the biggest one that comes to mind is courageous safety leadership. So all of our co-op students and new hires and people that haven't done it yet go through sort of a program where the focus, I think that was rolled out in 2008, was to change the culture of safety at Teck. We've come a long way since then, I believe. And it's sort of like making personal commitments, team commitments to safety, holding each other accountable, and essentially feeling empowered to speak up when you see something isn't right, or to ask questions if you're unsure. So that's the big one. On top of course, a number of more day-to-day level audit programs. We have a Take 5 program that's rolled out across all our operations, just to, kind of force you to do a quick 5-minute check of your task and make sure that you're aware of all the high potential hazards.
Okay, that's awesome. Thanks. Yeah, no, one that I always talk to students about too, because I think it's a really a quick introduction, I guess. So we also have what's called a Green Hard Hat program. And so any new hires, whether they're senior management, whether you're a co-op student, also start with a Green Hard Hat. And I think that's a really great introduction to an industrial site, in that it makes it really visible at operations. When you're out in the pit and you see Green Hard Hats, they're new to operations. So people keep an extra eye out for them. But also I always say that you can always ask any question when you have a Green Hard Hat on. Like, it's fair game, because people recognize that you're there to learn, and it just gives that, I guess it opens those doors and really sets that stage for that communication around safety, and really asking the questions and discussing safety. And I think that's a really important program for people, to make it really obvious to others that we're there to focus on your safety and we're keeping an eye out for you, kind of thing too. Leigh, did you want to comment on any of that? Does that sort of cover it?
Yeah, that mostly covers it. I guess the only other thing I would like to add is at Tech, safety, it's safety above everything else. So we are not pushing production and trying to maim or injure people or damage the environment. So if it's not safe, the work doesn't get done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great to note. We're going to circle back to the PhD. Someone has a question here about, and I'm sorry if I've missed it earlier. There's for PhD holders interested in permanent positions, how critical is it to have a PGO designation prior to applying? Will applicants receive consideration without it? Especially important in the context of folks who were educated outside Canada and don't yet have the work experience to qualify for the PGO, for the professional designation. Leigh, do you want to comment on that? I know we have several PhDs amongst our mixes within RACE, and then yourself. If you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I can speak to that. I didn't go to school outside Canada except for the PhD, so that might be a little different. But I've been GIT since 2011, and I'm still not PGO, and I'm here. So it's something that is considered, but so long as you can come up with a plan with your manager to get your designation as soon as possible, then Tech actually supports you in doing that. I mean, if you have questions, if you need to pay the fees, various fees you got to pay for to EGBC, the company will cover all of that. So it's not a problem to apply without having your full PGO designation, so long as you can show that you're able to get it in the shortest amount of time possible.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. Perfect. Great. Thanks for sharing that. Like you say, it's always a common question we get. So I'm happy that you are able to answer all these questions for us. And then Andrea, I want to talk a little bit on the exploration side, because I think that is an area that we do quite a bit of hiring through the summer period. We do a lot of hiring through our projects through Vancouver, which you've worked for already and worked in exploration. And we also have a student on the line here too that worked in exploration, but at our operations. So I guess I'll start with you, Andrea, and then I'll introduce Andrew. Andrew, if you could talk to me a little bit about some of the projects that we have ongoing, or what was that exploration experience like for you?
Andrea, you said, right?
Yes, sorry, yes, Andrea. Not Andrew yet.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, my initial experience in exploration was greenfields exploration, so not on a mine. Well, sorry, I should correct myself. At HPC, I was managing drills at site there, so in pits and just outside of our active pits. So that kind of introduced me to diamond drilling, which is what we did there. And then, yeah, exploration projects on more remote areas and logistics involved in that was a very big challenge, obviously. Helicopter supported programs, managing the data throughout the program, and then managing the teams throughout the program as well. And then shifting back to site, I haven't been managing exploration projects much here at Lion Creek. We sort of have a team doing that. I think I took care of one summer. But yeah, now we've really built up the resources at site for that with support from the geoscience group in Sparwood. So typically the sites now have sort of a project manager at each site, employed by each site, and then the support for project geologists comes from Sparwood. So that's kind of shifted and really helped out managing these programs, which of course have a lot more reporting, permitting, and safety sort of contract management involved. But typically, just for technical side of things, on coal sites for geology and quality information, we use RC drilling. And then we usually, on the geotech side, we'll have core drills supporting that, where we can get rock quality designation type data from the cores, or we install piezometers or any sort of things like that, and of course get geology information there as well.
Okay, awesome.
Project generalization, but
it's good. Yeah, it's good insights for everybody. Thanks, Andrea. And then, yes, without further ado, how about I throw it over to Andrew. So Andrew was a recent student for our co-op program, and he was hired under the exploration group within the coal business unit of Teck. So Andrew, do you want to turn your mic on and just do a quick intro and just tell us a little bit about your role as a co-op student?
Yeah, so I just finished my co-op position here at the end of December, and so I'll just talk about some of the things I did while working for Teck. So I was really lucky to be able to help out with these exploration projects, because that is actually like what I want to do once I graduate and stuff. So I was able to work with Lay and other project geologists on their RC and diamond drill programs. Just helping out. I got to stake holes and do drill site checks and be with all the logistics of building roads to drill pads and stuff. It was really awesome to help out with that. And then another big part of what I did was I did geotechnical logging for some of our diamond drill holes. And it was just like a really good experience for like work after graduating, because there is a lot of core logging in that, and just to be comfortable around like diamond drills and logging core and lithology, and then all the geotechnical aspects of that was just really great. And it was awesome to work at Teck, because like we said earlier, like by the end of it, like I was completely independent. I had my own work truck. Sometimes I was working night shift logging the core. And just like I was completely trusted to do my job, which just felt amazing. Yeah, so that was mostly what I did.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's great. And it's really neat to see your enthusiasm about the role. I think that's really, you found a good niche area where you're a good fit for, right? When you have that sort of passion. And we certainly see that a lot with our teams. I know that's something I speak to a lot of our technical teams. People are like, well, what's the culture like at Teck? And I'm like, you're never going to meet a more passionate group of people. They love what they do. They get to come to work in it and really get some fun projects and really interesting stuff to do. And that makes it all worthwhile, right? Great. Okay, I just want to make sure. And I guess, Andrew, you sort of spoke to this, and maybe I'll get both your comments before we jump into trivia here, is what makes a successful co-op student for you guys? Like, Andrea, if you want to speak to it, I know you've had lots. Are there any sort of key parts of what a student's doing, or key moments that sort of make them as a highlight in your co-op list?
Yeah, I think it's just an eagerness to learn. I mean, we could talk about experience that might help, like software type things, but I think really for us, it's just a positive attitude, willingness to learn and try all sorts of different hats on, like Andrew said, because at some point you maybe, be able to try out something new. Like our last co-op was able to spend some time down at our lab here on site, which wasn't planned, but she was quite happy to have that experience as well. Yeah, and just asking lots of questions, being open to feedback, and yeah, just team players all around.
That's great. Thanks, Andrea. And then, Lay, do you want to add to that?
Oh, between Andrew and Andrea, they covered most of it. I mean, at least for the Central Geoscience group that I'm a part of, you also get to go to different sites. I think that's something Andrew did not emphasize. So you're not working at just the one site. You kind of get to see various things at different operations, and then we also have a bunch of cool initiatives we're working on the geochemistry side with geophysics. So it's not just geology; it's geoscience.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome to highlight. Yeah, and someone in the chat here, before we go to trivia, Misaki, I'll just get through this one question, and then we can always come back if there's any other questions. Someone's asked, do we hire Master of Environmental Science students with undergraduate degrees in geology with about 6 months experience of geotech experience and long experience in position of project geologist? So yeah, that's a fairly specific question, but I would say, as a general answer, I would say yes. There's a few different areas that someone like with that kind of experience could certainly work in. We have a huge environmental group as well, and there's lots of different areas in the environmental group, and then as well geology. I'm imagining they're looking at a full-time role. So yeah, I guess I would suggest first, and I usually go through this at the end, but for someone like David who's asked this question, or anybody else on the line who's really looking for opportunities with tech, something I would suggest is we have a ton of opportunities. We're recruiting like crazy right now. There's lots of growth within the company, lots of changes. We're moving people into the race team and looking for people in operations or vice versa. So there's a lot of opportunities. So what I would suggest to people is certainly keep an eye on the website, and you can set yourself up for job alerts and really take a look at the job positions, because sometimes they're maybe not named traditionally what you would think. It's not always just geologist, or there's a few different ways. You might want to go into operational excellence, or you might want to go into like the geosciences side. So there's lots of different opportunities that you could certainly look to. So I would say set yourself up for job alert, that basically you can highlight experience that you would that you're interested in, and it would ping you when a job comes up that's sort of highlighting like geology or that sort of thing. So anyway, that's something to think about as a full-time graduate looking full-time work anyway. And then co-op positions are posted now. Oh, sorry, Andrea, go ahead.
I could, speak to that a little bit. I mean, I think the key piece there is that there's an undergraduate degree in geology, and that you have the courses and experience required to get that PGO designation, specifically as a project geologist. So that's just something to check on with your courses and matching up to whichever, if it's the BC or EPEG designation that you're looking for, that would probably be something in a specifically geologist role. But yeah, there's definitely lots of opportunity for experience like that.
Okay, perfect. And then Misaki tells me there's another question here that I might have missed. All right, what year geology students would you typically accept for entry-level jobs, and what would their roles typically entail? So if John's looking for a co-op position, we tend to focus on third-year students quite a bit, and just because you got a good core number of courses under your belt that you could be successful in a role here, just because, again, like we've mentioned, you get quite a bit of responsibility. And so I think that must be what you're speaking to there. And I would say we definitely lean to third year at a minimum more often than not. So I sort of highlighted a little bit at the beginning. Like I mentioned, we have a huge co-op program, as well as EITs and new graduates. We do quite a bit of hiring as well. So for the co-op program, we are currently recruiting for the upcoming May 2022 term, which seems crazy. I feel like I'm speaking so far in the future, but it's not that far away. We're going to have a record number of openings coming up, and we're continuing to grow and evolve as a company. And so, yeah, we're looking at least 120 across the business, and I know quite a chunk of those are going to be in the geology space. So I would encourage you to check out the website if you're interested in applying for an opportunity for May. If you're not available for May and you're looking for opportunities down the road, every 4 months you'll consistently see co-op opportunities posted on our website. So 3 times a year. So we usually recruit about 4 months in advance. So right now, like I mentioned, we're recruiting for May. In May, we'll be recruiting for September, and September for the January start. So quite a few at any given time. I know across the coal business unit, we do hire the bulk of the co-op students. And at any given time, you're looking at about 120 to 150 students that are kicking around the different operations and offices across the valley. So it really makes for a really cool experience as a student, not only from the professional standpoint, but then also as a community as well. And we have lots of events that we have and support that we offer for our students while they're a student with us. So we have our campus, sorry, I just forgot the name of it, campus community, I guess, if you will, a student community. And we have events for them. So whether it's like a lunch and learn, or maybe events outside of work, like we've had spa day, we've had different things like that, as well as like outdoor adventures and outdoor sort of of scavenger hunt type things. So lots of different cool little events to do as a student while you're here inside of work as well as outside. And here's a couple comments of students that have worked for us before that, I talked about how we do a survey with our students when they leave to talk a little bit about their experience. And here's a couple of comments that we just pulled quickly to show you a little bit about from the students what their experience is all about and why they've enjoyed working for us. So certainly I can talk about it until I'm blue in the face, but it really means a lot more when it comes from the students themselves. All right, and then I'm just going to check to see if there's any other questions that we want to circle back before we let everyone continue on with their day today. Yeah, I think thanks, Andrew, for answering that question in the chat there. I think, yeah, there's quite a variety. Like Andrew has some really great field experience. I say, as a general rule, any geo position that you're going to have with us, you're likely going to be at least 50% in the field. So you're going to get quite a bit of field exposure and opportunity to work on projects. We do tend to lean towards a longer co-op term, so 8 months, 12 months, 16 months. And a lot of that is based on that, what Andrew had talked about, where he was given so much responsibility. If you're here a little bit longer term, we're able to get a couple of projects under your belt. You're able to get a lot more responsibility and take ownership of a few projects on your own. And that really just elevates that experience that much more. So I guess from a general standpoint, just to comment on Andrew's experience he's had, that's fairly common with the students here. And like you say, with those longer terms, you're able to get a little bit longer and more in-depth experience with us. All right. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If there's no other questions, I know we have another student on the line, Morgan, that we haven't really brought you into it. Morgan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know before we go, it'd be nice. I know that you've worked in a variety of areas, but coming from a geo background, you've had some really unique experience. So I think before we go, it'd be neat to sort of just talk a little bit about the experience you're able to get as tech, and I guess to speak to the variety aspect of working in operational excellence and that sort of supporting those teams. I think that's a really interesting take on the geo background. If you want to just talk a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, so I started last May in operations excellence, and I'm doing a master's in geology at U of C, so definitely a geology student. But in OpEx, so that team basically focuses on projects where they can kind of make improvements around the mine. So they work with all different teams. So what they focused on with me is they put me in projects that were more geology focused. So I got to work with Race 21 on a project where they were trying to incorporate or test out logging while drilling. So kind of just a different logging technology than the one we're using. So so I got to work a lot on that. And then I got to work with this survey team, I guess it would kind of be short range, on a drone project where they were developing a drone that would sniff out gas, as opposed to people going in with actual meters. So all very new kind of technology. So those were very cool, and they definitely guided my experience because I was in geology. And then so I did that for, and there was day-to-day kind of admin stuff too as well, but definitely more of a focus on the geology. But then I moved into a geological engineering role in October, just because they saw there was an opening and they saw my interest, definitely interested in geology. And they, yeah, so they moved me into that role in October, and now I'm working on just one project specifically, and I'm basically taking satellite data and then trying to figure out how to process that to develop displacement maps to try and see where the Earth has kind of moved around the mine. And this is something that we pay for currently, but they asked me to figure out if we could do it ourselves. So yeah, so it's very cool new technology, and yeah, just all different stuff, but really awesome.
Yeah, you definitely had a mixed bag of experience, just where we've you put you in the operations excellence and you're moving into geology. So I think that's really neat for students to see that sort of variety that you're able to get into. And I guess before we let everyone go, I think while we have Morgan and Andrew on the line too, and just to get you to speak a little bit more, I guess what advice would you guys give to other students who are interested in coming on board with tech? And maybe Morgan, I'll start with you, and then we'll pass it over to Andrew.
Sure, just advice in terms of after they started, or just
or even just if they want to land a job with tech, or if they're interested in working at tech, what sort of advice would you offer? I guess
I think similar to what Andrea said, just being very kind of open to learning new things and being very kind of flexible with what you're going to do, you know, because you never know what's going to come up. And being excited about coming, working like in the field and also coming to the Valley. I think that was a very big part of it. And my excitement for kind of being in the mountains and like really wanting that lifestyle was a big part of it. Just so that they knew that I would kind of fit in here. So, and just, yeah, in general, having an excitement for the role and being at Tech.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great, Morgan. Yeah, I know that's something that we haven't talked as much about, but certainly something that we can take a lot of pride in, that we're based in some pretty spectacular locations. So places where people come to vacation and we get to live and work here, and it makes it pretty fun. And, you know, you saw from the video at the start, the sort of lifestyle options and things you could do in the outdoors here are just, yeah, you can't match it anywhere else really. So we definitely have a lot of pride in the locations that we're able to operate in. And Andrew, any advice that you want to offer for any students that are interested in coming on board with Tech?
See, I hear this a lot, and I didn't think people still did this, but make sure you don't just send off a like cookie cutter like resume that you send off to everywhere and same with the cover letter. I don't know why people still just, you know, copy and paste that everywhere. You need to make it specific and, you know, say why you would be, you know, good at this specific job. So I feel like everyone's probably heard that before, but it's like so important because I hear at other companies, if it's not personalized to the company, they kind of just throw it away. And then another thing, like with working, like obviously everybody has their bad days and stuff, but I just find people like to work with people who enjoy what they're doing and are in a good mood. And I find if you're passionate and enjoy what you're working on, you do a better job as well. And so, and just like being open to doing all different things, because you could see Morgan has had a way different experience than I have. And there's just such a large variety of things you could do. Like when I first started, I was in the lab, and then I was given the opportunity to be doing this logging in the field, and I just had to jump on it because it's just, you know, being excited for getting the experience is really good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, something I often tell students too is just don't pigeonhole yourself into thinking like you only want to do a certain thing when, you know, going through the interview process. You know, you really, it's nice to have interest in certain areas, but being open and sort of willing to see other areas, because as a student, some of this stuff is just so different than what you would learn in the academic setting or what you would talk about in school. So it's really neat to see when students come in and they kind of have an idea in their head of what they're going to do, and then they come in, they're like, holy, this is so much more than what I thought it was going to be. And that for me makes it all worthwhile. It makes it pretty fun. Great. Well, I think we've got all the questions. So everybody, I think Masaki just made a note about posting the link. So we will hit you up for a survey. We want to make sure that these events are covering the information and highlighting areas of the company that we want you guys to learn about and you guys want to learn about. So certainly give us some feedback in this survey. Is there anything we need to change or improve? Then all means fill us in. Anything I'm forgetting, Masaki? Sorry, I just stole your thunder at the end there.
No, that's all good. Only thing I add is that we're going to spam you at the end with this link anyways. So if you can fill out that feedback survey, that'd be great, and we'll know what to deliver and what not to deliver in the fall for example, for future students. So we really appreciate you joining today. Thank you, Leigh and Andrea and Morgan and Andrew and all the support. And yeah, thanks for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you at future campus coffees. We got a couple more coming up in the next couple weeks.
Awesome.